Good morning, RPS.
My name is Sophia.
And my name is Sarah.
And we are here with the New Zealand author Weng Chan. Today we will be asking her some questions about her career.
So, what made you become an author?
I think it was because I read so much when I was young. I used to read everything, get out a stack of books from the libraries, or my dad would take us to the second-hand bookshops in Singapore, which were often out in the open on the 5-foot way, which is a covered pavement. And I think that if you read a lot, some people will actually gravitate towards wanting to make their own stories. So I think that's mostly why.
How many books have you written?
So I've only had one published book, which is Lizard's Tale there, but I have written one other book before I wrote that one. And I think of that as my practice book, because I did send it out to some publishers, but it never did get published. And I think now that it's actually a book that I wrote, well, a manuscript, that taught me a lot about writing, but it will probably never get published.
What was your inspiration for Lizard's Tale?
My inspiration was my children. I wanted to write a book that had a Chinese main character and was also set in Singapore, so that my children had that to read, because when they were young, I was looking for books that had Chinese main characters, or were set in Singapore, or both, and it was very hard to find any. Then I thought, oh well, maybe I'll write one. And then I thought about Singapore and what was there, and Raffles Hotel was one of the things that sprung to mind, so that's how I started writing Lizard's Tale.
Do you have an idol that inspired you to become an author?
I think that all the authors that I read when I was young really are an inspiration for writing really good stories. My first chapter book was written by Enid Blyton, and I read many of her books, but other authors that were also quite inspirational are Tove Jansson, and she wrote the Moomin books, which I'm not so sure whether they're as popular now, but I also read a lot of comics and graphic novels like Tintin and Asterix, and also Calvin and Hobbes, which was my favourite, so yeah.
How do you get ideas for your books?
I think a lot of times when you start writing, that's when the ideas come up. So if you start off with a situation and a character, and then you think about what could happen to that character, like a problem for that character, then you have to write the problem. And once you have the problem, you need to have a solution. And sometimes I find it's only when I'm actually putting pen to paper or typing on the keyboard that some ideas will come to me. So if I'm not writing, I will get some ideas, but I get different ideas in the actual act of writing.
Who is your favourite author apart from you?
My favourite author? I have a number of favourite authors, and they kind of change depending on the day. One of them is Angie Thomas. She wrote a book called The Hate You Give, which is more of a YA book. I also really love Terry Pratchett's books. Yes, and also there was somebody else. Oh yes, and then there was a chap called Gerald Durrell who wrote a book called My Family and Other Animals, which is about him growing up in Greece in the 1930s, and he was very, very keen on animals, and he would go out and look for animals to study, and it was just really interesting. And he actually became a man who owned a zoo. He started his own zoo on the island called Jersey, which is off England somewhere. Yeah.
Where do you normally write your books?
Normally I'm just at my computer, and it doesn't really matter where the computer is. It can be in the dining room or in the study. I try not to get too fixated about where I am, because otherwise I'll have to wait till I'm there to do it. So I try to just be more flexible as to where I write. So just at home in front of the computer.
Do you have any draft books that you didn't want to publish, and if so, why?
Well, I did actually want to publish that first manuscript that I told you about, but I think that will probably not get published. Yeah, unless I made a lot of changes to it. which I think probably I'll just leave it as my practice book. Yeah.
Apart from being an author, what other jobs would you have chosen?
What other jobs would I have chosen? I think my dream job is authoring. And I have also been a doctor, which was awesome. So if I wasn't writing right now, I'd probably choose some sort of doctoring job to do some study to get into some specialty. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate you answering our questions. Bye, RPS!